This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
You are tuned in to the FowlWeather Podcast, the forecast to your next successful hunt. Coming to you from the home office, Jack's Reef, New York.
Digging deep into the science to develop the first of 2 exclusive long-term seasonal forecasts, the FowlWeather Podcast team breaks down global climate conditions affecting cold outbreaks and snowfall this coming December and January. Will it be a banner year with moderate duck numbers? Will that cold snow develop in time to get the ducks south? All that answered, and your duck migration forecast today on the FowlWeather Podcast. We thank our every week listeners. You know who you are. Those that never miss a single migration forecast episode each Monday morning. We appreciate y'all very, very much. Y'all are as ate up as me about ducks, duck biology, and duck migration. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks know where they're at. Think about that. You know where the ducks are at before the ducks even know where they're at. Our dedicated weekly listeners can pick the best days to hunt because the FowlWeather Podcast forecasts fresh ducks hot from the north. Shoot the ducks from the north before they know where they're at. I'm your host, Dr. Mike, coming to you from sunny and windy North Dakota. We made it the 20-plus hours to our destination, and the prairies have not disappointed. Joining me on this trip are my wife, Sarah, neighbor Sean, friend Jim, and baby Jaeger and Dr. Zook, along with Jim's beagle, Bo. Turns out beagles can find pheasants, too. We've shot a good diversity of species on big sloughs and smaller, shallow potholes, but I tell you, competition's been a little stiff, mostly from Minnesota and Wisconsin. It's pretty intense here, but we've been able to get away from other folks enough to have good hunts. I do see why folks state that North Dakota has to do something about non-resident hunter density and etiquette. But then again, would we want to limit the opportunity to come hunt in North Dakota? Oh boy, I'm not tackling that one today, but let me tackle the etiquette stuff briefly. We stopped and talked to a really nice gentleman last night, and then used his gated field entrance to access kind of North Dakota plots or land that the state rents from landowners so it's open to hunting. We simply cross kind of a small section of his land to access a farther back than normal pond, right? So a pond that's a little farther back that had a good number of ducks. And he noted that he may take his land out of that plots program because it's more of a headache than it's worth. He only gets about $2,300 per year, which, if you look at the pluses and minuses for these farmers, $2,300 doesn't go very far and kind of a drop in the bucket. But he said he probably spends that much money chasing down cattle from gates left open and other issues with hunters. So first and foremost, respect the landowner, right, when you're out here. We brought him a case of, I probably can't say this, but Coors Banquet, so what? After that, we also dropped off a bottle of New York maple syrup, right? And I guess so please respect the access and thank these folks for even having their land enrolled and letting you through gates and things like that. They don't have to. It's their land. Remember that. So be friendly with the local folks. They're good people. They like to talk too. So take some time and chat with them, right? Tell them your story. Let them get to know you as well. Next, we saw a ton of folks driving around all day and jump shooting birds off potholes. So, okay, completely legal, but also I think a way to basically just blow up section after section of waterfowl production area and other open land. So I will judge a little here, which I don't usually think that I do. Give the ducks a break, set up on them in the morning or evening, but dang, give them a break. I guess I just don't hate them enough these days. In the words of my good friend Heath Hagee that we hunted with today, he said, I just don't hate them enough these days to wait 2 more hours to shoot 3 more ducks for a limit. I'm paraphrasing, but I think that's what he was getting at. We hunted with Heath today, and it was pretty much a perfect hunt. Not because we limited it out, because how the entire hunt went down. Because the ducks didn't work perfectly. We got to fuck with the decoys a bunch. Pulled the spinners, put them back out. Pulled the spinners again. We made good shots, and we made some bad shots. We BS'd a bunch. Sarah finally shot another green-winged teal, which y'all might not know this, and if you know her, her response to green wings is F teal because I can't hit them. And it was one of those rising teal shots that we see at the sporting clays. Sarah and I shoot sporting clays a lot each Sunday. But I tell you, when I shoot teal, they just zip through the decoys or they come in and they land in front of you before you can shoot at them. I've rarely seen that rising teal kind of sporting clays shot actually happen in the marsh. But today it did, and she just crunched a bird. So maybe that sporting clays practice helped. Anyhow, I could go on, and you know that type of hunt. The hunt with great company and birds that work so-so. But that even makes it better, right? After we got our 3 pintails, of course, the pintails just started backpedaling into the decoys in front of us. But Heath and I, about midway through the hunt, Heath and I both smoked a decent plumed up Drake pintail. I mean, we shot at the same time. I got some pictures of it with Jaeger. And then I kind of tossed it like a little underhand toss as I walked over to this muskrat hut that we were setting birds on. And we had, I think, 3 or 4 birds at that time, and it rolled back down. The leg flopped, and a silver band stared me directly in the face. I said, hey, folks, this pintail's banded. He says, no way, man. No way that is banded. I said, yeah, it is. And he said, are you sure? I said, Heath, here, look at it. I'm not pulling your leg. My wife, Sarah, says, no way it's banded, right? Like what you get from the whole, like, I got a band. And they're like, no way. Yeah, it was banded. So back at the trucks, I tried to give the banded pintail to Heath, and he tried to give it to me, right? The total opposite of the band mongers and the duck mongers that try to claim every bird they shoot at. It was a fun battle back and forth, and I'd say a lesson in etiquette and, how should I turn this down? But it was fun. Eventually, I took the bird. He's like, you drove this far, and I went to put it on the tailgate, and he goes, no, just kidding, I want it. And I looked back, and he was just laughing at me. So this is how it should go down, because Heath, Sarah, and I combined on a bunch of birds. Jaeger did an amazing job on, some diving birds that were gimped that she brought back live. And at the end of the day, who shot what? Man, none of that matters. We didn't miss many ducks today among the 3 of us, and when we did, it was ugly, which was fun, and we laughed about that too. We had a great day that started below the stars and the really high moon, and then a low fog that hung for a while, then the warm sun, as that night turned into day and the ducks did their thing on the prairies of North America. I tell you, my friends out there in duck country, I could not be happier right now. Thanks for joining us on this week's podcast, and that's Dr. Mike, and what I'd say is friends and family, and when I say family, I mean dogs too, coming to you from North Dakota, sunny, windy North Dakota. Next up, the long-term seasonal forecast, so please stick with us. Look, folks, the Farmland Group across the Mid-South is your one-stop shop for real estate brokerage, consulting, management, lending, and appraisals. If you own land or you want land, the Farmland Group is where it's at. With over $500 million in farm sales and growing, Gwynn and Shelby Smith have you covered. Look, if you're thinking about buying or selling, contact the Farmland Group to access their full suite of services. If you already own property and want to build equity and value, the Farmland Group gets it done. If you're looking to purchase a new property, well, they get that done too, and they have access to some of the best lending available. Looking to sell? Get it appraised with a Farmland Group affiliated appraiser. But let's be clear for our listenership too. They also offer farm and hunt property management to create places that attract more ducks and more bucks. Who doesn't want that? More ducks and more bucks. Let the Farmland Group build value into your property. Find them today at farmlg.com. That's farmlg.com. You're not going to be disappointed. Contact Shelby Smith today at farmlg.com and let him know that the Foul Weather Podcast sent you their way. Okay, first a quick reboot or primer on how we make our long-term seasonal forecast. There's already a lot of material way back in episode 3, how we make seasonal forecasts, and then also in this year's preseason primer in episode 45. But in short, what we look for are atmospheric conditions that set in motion seasonal weather conditions that have a greater than random chance of occurring. Some years it's easier to make long-term duck season kind of weather predictions because the global atmospheric conditions are a slam dunk. In others, it's kind of a toss-up. Last year was easy. With a strong El Nino and every other indicator pointing towards a very mild winter, it was easy. And our predictions about timing of any cold or snow were pretty much spot on. If you're interested on how we did with our predictions last year, follow up by listening to episode 29, Where Were the Ducks? The duck season recap. This year, we are looking to head into a moderate La Nina, which brings another set of relatively predictable conditions, but this can be upset by the Arctic Oscillation Index, which is the difference between the pressure near the poles and equator, that help us predict cold outbreaks on, say, a 7 to 10 day time frame, shorter time frame than these seasonal ones. We also have the polar vortex, which right now is in a weak phase, which actually enables the jet stream to potentially wobble more and introduce cold outbreaks, typically into eastern North America. Last, we look at Arctic sea ice and snow cover near Siberia, specifically the Snow Advance Index, or SAI, Snow Advance Index, during the month of October over western Siberia. If snow cover advances quickly, there is a greater likelihood of a cold, high-pressure system setting up in that part of the world that increases the potential for a wobbly jet stream and cold outbreaks under a weak polar vortex. Everyone that is a winter enthusiast right now is getting super excited about a generally weak polar vortex because if it was strong, that means there is strong circulation of cold air near the Arctic, which decreases likelihood of a polar vortex disruption and cold outbreaks over, say, the Mississippi and Atlantic flyways. Okay, so people are geeked out about that weak polar vortex right now, but I'm in regular contact with winter forecast climatologists, and the word on the street is don't get too excited about that weak polar vortex at this point of the year. It did just stretch, which gave the northern portions of the Atlantic flyway some cool temps recently, but where the polar vortex goes from here is really random chance at this point. That is, an early fall weak polar vortex does not predict a cold winter later on. We have to watch the evolution of global atmospheric patterns to know what is next, and we should be able to provide a more definitive prediction on the Foul Weather Podcast for December and January in part 2 of our long-term seasonal forecast, which will come out in early November once all the data from Siberian snow cover, advance index, all that data crunching is in. For now, we lean heavily on the La Nina pattern. Temperatures of the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf, and the hurricane season patterns we are seeing to make predictions about duck migration for this coming season. Okay, so that's rehashing a bunch of information we've provided listeners in the past, so let's dig into that seasonal forecast. First, it can't be as bad as last year, right? Even with an insanely warm Atlantic Ocean and Gulf, that's what's been producing the hurricanes, the strong hurricanes we've been seeing, is very, very warm ocean temperatures in the Atlantic Ocean and Gulf. Even with that, La Nina will have some quality impacts in the form of cooler temperatures, likely stretching from Western Canada down into the northern portions of the U.S. Pacific Flyway and across to the western portions of the Great Lakes. We also predict above average precipitation for the same region, but then also over into the rest of the lower Great Lakes region and northeast U.S. The question is when that precipitation falls as snow and not just rain, which would make more duck habitat and have ducks hang north longer, right? If it fell as rain, that would actually make more duck habitat and ducks would hang north longer. If it snows and it gets cold, that's going to push them. That said, my prediction is for a good cold shot and possibly snow event about Thanksgiving for the prairies, which should make a good number of ducks move into mid-latitude areas at that point. Up until then, the prediction is really for generally warm conditions and delayed migration in all 4 flyways. After that, I'd expect 2 good cold shots in December that also make ducks move, even mallards south down the central Mississippi and Atlantic flyways. It's predicted that even mallards will move on these because there's likely to be snow events in the form of lake effect snow across the Great Lakes region in this kind of same time period. I don't think we'll see big snow events west of the Great Lakes, mostly talking about the prairies here, until February and March. But those would really help fill up those potholes, that we need to be wet for next spring. So as I talk about this cold, the problem here is how far does this cold stretch? And there I think we have some potential problems for the Deep South, because your weather across the southern reaches of all 4 flyways is likely to have above average temperatures through the entirety of duck season. So if you don't like to hunt ducks in the cold, it's good weather for you. But the cold and snowy systems that do move through will certainly push ducks past mid-latitudes and into the south. Many of those ducks are just going to stop in the mid-latitudes too, so it's going to be important to tune in each week once we kind of freeze up north and see if there are WSI values great enough to push ducks further south out of those mid-latitudes during each week. I will state that it is likely that early dabbling ducks will make it in time to the south for seasons to open, but mallards and black ducks, along with diving ducks, are likely to hang up in mid-latitudes for quite some time this coming December and January. So in general this year, a bit more of that typical pattern we've started to become accustomed to of ducks spreading out from the mid-latitudes to the south, but no good concentrations anywhere, except that mallards are expected to ball up for a good amount of time in the mid-latitudes. The other condition here to consider is local water conditions, which is highly variable across the flyways. The breeding grounds, other than Prairie Canada, typically have abundant water right now, so ducks holding on as long as expected. Well, that's expected. Those birds are going to hold on as long as they've got those water resources and it doesn't freeze and it doesn't snow for the most part. Once they start to move, it will depend on fall and winter rains as to if they have abundant food resources and remain north. I do expect at least one more additional tropical system for the Atlantic Flyway, which is already super wet up to about Maryland. But if, for instance, we get a big rain in New York, New England region up into Ontario, then we will likely hold mallards longer as moist soil foods become increasingly abundant and cold kind of won't make them move until kind of that November, December period. The southern portions of all flyways are also expected to be drier than normal, so watch for any tropical activity and be ready to catch water if you have not already. On the other coast, for our Pacific folks, I'd expect that cold pushes down far enough to really move ducks into kind of like Washington, southern Idaho, and northern California. But a lot of that good cold may not come until December either, and ducks are likely to remain on rivers and field feed for some time. Lots of rain is also forecast for the northern Pacific Flyway folks, which may really delay things in those river valleys as well. Last year, between Christmas and New Year's, our listenership at the Foul Weather Podcast jumped a ton because everybody was wondering where the heck are the ducks, and that's what we were talking about. But I do think that by Christmas this year, many of us will be pretty set up to have ducks, and that January would be far better shooting for folks in the South than last year. Of course, following the Foul Weather Podcast each week to pick those best days to hunt is always a good bet, and we also need to see how that Siberian snow cover advances and continue to watch the development or not development of the polar vortex over the coming 2 to 3 weeks. So it's going to be important to tune back in for part 2 of our seasonal forecast to get the updated predictions with more data coming in by that point. Right now, the sea ice is low in the Arctic near Siberia, so that open water has the chance to produce abundant snow in the coming 2 weeks. Right now, the snow cover is slightly ahead of pace from last year, but kind of right around average for the past decade. But it can catch up very quickly if temperatures and wind direction are correct for a big kind of good old Siberian snowstorm. Looks like good atmospheric blocking may be setting up, though, right now, which would predict a good amount of polar vortex stretching and disruption and cold for eastern North America this coming winter if that sets in and stays that way. So that's it for now, folks. Kind of a mixed bag right now, but better than last year for sure. So get those blinds brushed, boat motors running smooth, that gun clean, the decoys packed, and that old dog train. It's duck season just around the corner for many. For those of you with duck seasons open, feel free to shoot me an email at drmike@fowlweather.co with an update about your conditions and if you're seeing kind of what we've been reporting. I think a lot of folks are having good success because of good duck production across the board this year. But remember to give them a break if you don't have flight days, because ducks can get stale pretty quickly under too much pressure and mild weather. I think that will be very important for our southern friends this season because we likely have weather to deliver y'all ducks, right? There's going to be cold enough stuff up north to get those birds south, but then dry and warm conditions locally might create conditions where pressured ducks don't have to move, and they just won't. So I really think picking flight days this year will be very important to season-long satisfaction, maybe even more so this year than normal. Okay, up next, our duck migration forecast for the coming week, so please stick with us.
Hold on, folks, don't turn that channel. We've got some really exciting news for you. The Foul Weather Podcast has teamed up with Wildlife Strategies. That's right, I'm now working directly with Ryan Delaney of Wildlife Strategies to build value into your land. Wildlife Strategies is already known for quality wildlife habitat management, be it deer, turkeys, ducks, or whatever you pursue. Ryan knows his stuff. Look, I don't add my name to just any business, but I believe in what Wildlife Strategies is doing for landowners throughout the Southeast U.S. and beyond. If you want science-based solutions to create great wildlife habitat, Wildlife Strategies is your best bet. If you're interested in ducks, when we say, may your skies be filled, well, Wildlife Strategies does just that. They fill your skies with ducks. Contact Ryan Delaney today at ryan@farmlg.com for a site visit. You won't be disappointed you did. Ryan covers the southern tier of states, and I'm available to build habitat management plans across the northern tier. Contact us today for a quote. The Wildlife Strategies team sees your property through from the initial assessment and development of a 3-year time frame management plan through annual check-ins and course corrections as needed. Contact Ryan today at ryan@farmlg.com or Dr. Mike at FowlWeather.co. You won't be disappointed you did. Fill your skies with ducks and your forests and fields with deer and turkey with Wildlife Strategies.
On to the forecast for the week. I guess slow is the word of the week. Slow, slow, slow. It's going to be a trickle. In most areas south of Canada and our most northern tier states in the Pacific and Central Flyway, WSI values are kind of slouches as temperatures rise. A trickle of ducks is expected to continue south, but really just early ducks. As Heath Hagee noted last Saturday, he said, I'm surprised these pintails are not moving on, but it's also been a slow movement out of the prairies and other areas to the north this year. It's just too warm, I'm telling you, man. Up in the high 60s and 70s much of the week for most areas in the prairies. There's kind of this like barrier too. Like when you get to Mitchell, South Dakota this week, there's 80s, and then it degrades really quickly as you go north, right? This week, maybe probably later in the week, we're going to post comparisons in the WSI between this year and last year during this week in the prairies, and you're going to see a strong contrast. So, slow is the word of the week, as I said. Alaska, northern Alberta, northern portions of the Pacific Flyway see ducks on the move south, but most places will only see a trickle of early ducks like widgeon, gadwall, greenwings, and shoveler. A highlight might be that areas around like Devil's Lake have WSI values great enough to cause movement of these early ducks like shoveler, widgeon, and green-winged teal south later this coming week, right? So if you're south of Devil's Lake, I'd expect, kind of a bit of a little movement south, but they're not likely to go far. As per Heath, right, the pintails are still here in North Dakota, and we aren't expected to see anything major for them moving out of the prairies south in the coming week. The temperatures are just too warm. So, again, a trickle south is happening, but nothing major. If anything, the Dakota and northern tier states may pick up a few more pintails from northern areas where there's some, cold stuff. So, here's the deal. I'd expect to see some of those what I call jerk pintails, right, that don't work. They'll come in higher than you can shoot them the first time, and then they drift over like 6 more times trying to be like, hey, I don't think this is a thing because I've seen this before, and they're sure they haven't seen it. And then eventually they leave. And then there's others that just dive in. Those that just dive in are probably fresh ducks hot from the north, just like that banded pintail that we shot today that didn't hesitate at all, and it was banded in Saskatchewan just this July. In the east, in the Atlantic Flyway, pretty much everything is stale after the series of duck openers banged away at the early migrators that kind of moved in on those initial movements. I'd say, man, giving ducks space at this point and reducing pressure will likely help with success, right? But on managed areas where there's just, people can come and go as they please, and always fill all those spots, they'll probably continue to bang away and make stale ducks pretty quick, right? So if you don't give ducks a break, duck movement, harvest opportunities are going to be pretty much on the decline this week in the east. We're really waiting on the next cold front. That's the theme everywhere right now. If anything, out west, we've got some cold stuff coming down through Alberta, out of Alaska, and that's that cold thing that has this La Nina signature already. So a lot of people are talking about a really weak La Nina, and it's not going to kick in until later, but we're kind of seeing it in the Pacific Northwest through Alaska and down through, Alberta a little bit at this point. But, man, stuff is warm right now, so just hang in there, my folks across duck country, and remember, the season's long, and the rut, if you're a deer hunter, is starting in some places. So maybe chase a buck here and there. Watch your trail cameras and tune into the FowlWeather Podcast to pick those best days to actually duck hunt. They're coming. Ducks are on the move, and we're going to let you know when and where those ducks are on the move. So remember, we're the only duck migration forecast available.
The PC gave us computing power at home, the internet connected us, and mobile let us do it pretty much anywhere. Now generative AI lets us communicate with technology in our own language using our own senses. But figuring it all out when you're living through it is a totally different story. Welcome to Leading the Shift, a new podcast from Microsoft Azure. I'm your host, Susan Ettlinger. In each episode, leaders will share what they're learning to help you navigate all this change with confidence. Please join us. Listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
I also want to take a minute here and give a little note on this is because I'm recording this after I did the long-term forecast. We did that long-term forecast that you just heard before we went out to North Dakota, because we had to pre-record some stuff before we could make this trip and fit in all our other stuff, right? So there have been some really interesting progressions of the Snow Advance Index, as well as the development of the polar vortex that are really going to likely influence your coming season. But it's too much to cover now, and I think that's like part 2 at this point, because it's still kind of ongoing in how it develops. So once we crunch all those data on those factors and kind of have a polished forecast for you in about 2 or 3 weeks, that's going to help really predict the coming winter weather, to know, how duck migration is going to shake out this year. So definitely tune in with us for part 2 of the long-term seasonal forecast by the FowlWeather Podcast. So thanks for listening, and as always, may your skies be filled and shoot straight, my friends.